All right, today we're jumping into a really fascinating piece of legal history from the Philippine Supreme Court. It's a treason case from 1948, and it all turns on one of the toughest rules in the entire legal playbook. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to follow the court's own playbook. We'll start right at the beginning with the foundation, the facts of the case. So let's set the scene. We're in Dumaguete during World War II. This is a time and place where, the line between being a patriot and a traitor, it was razor thin. The whole case really zeroes in on the actions of one guy, Pastor Tan Mateo. And we're looking at a span of about 3 years here, from June of 1942 all the way to March of 1945. So who exactly was this guy, Pastor Tan Mateo? Well, he was a Filipino citizen. That much was clear. He even admitted to working as a provincial guard and in this so-called public opinion office. But, and this is a big but, he completely denied the really serious stuff. He swore he was never an informer and had no hand in arresting his fellow Filipinos. The public opinion office. I mean, it sounds pretty harmless, right? Like they're doing surveys or something. But no, its real job was to gather intel on guerrilla fighters for the Japanese army. Just working there was a huge piece of the puzzle for the prosecution. It basically showed, in their eyes, his adherence to the enemy. So for the government to make its case, they couldn't just say he was a bad guy. They had to prove specific actions, what the law calls overt acts, that showed he was giving aid and comfort to the enemy. And they really narrowed their focus down to 2 main charges. So you see the 2-pronged attack here. On one hand, you have the general spying charge, just him going around town, watching and reporting back. But on the other hand, you have something much more direct, his hands-on involvement in the arrests of specific people. Okay, so with all those facts and accusations on the table, what was the one big question the court had to answer? It really all boiled down to this one thing. And here it is, the ultimate question for this entire case. Did what Pastor Tan Mateo did, his job, his reports, his alleged role in the arrests, did it all legally add up to the crime of treason? So what did the highest court in the land have to say? Well, they didn't mince words. They looked at what the lower court decided, and they agreed completely. Yup, guilty. The Supreme Court backed up the lower court's verdict. In their eyes, Pastor Tan Mateo was guilty of treason. But why? How did they get there? This is where things get really interesting. The court's reasoning is basically a masterclass in how to apply a very, very specific rule of evidence. Okay, so the court looked at the 2 main charges and drew a massive line in the sand between them. For that first count, the general spying, sure, lots of people saw him walking around town. But here's the kicker. No 2 witnesses could point to the exact same moment and say, I saw him spy right then. So that charge, it fell apart. But the second count, the one about the arrests, that was a totally different story. This is where the prosecution really hit a home run. Back on March 28, 1943, Mateo didn't just casually mention he was suspicious of 2 guys, Calubran and Chan. No, he actively went to the chief of police and said, you should arrest them. And then he went with the cops to do it. The key here? 4 different people, including the 2 victims themselves, all testified to that single specific event. That was the magic bullet. But here's a really interesting twist. There was another arrest involving Mateo, a guy named Angeles Catan, and the court threw that one out. Why? Because even though Mateo was there, the prosecution never actually proved why Catan was arrested. Without proof that the arrest was meant to help the enemy, it just wasn't treason. You see, this whole case comes down to this one core legal idea for treason. It's a rule that was specifically designed to stop people from being wrongly accused, especially when politics and emotions are running high. And this rule, the 2-witness rule, sets an unbelievably high bar. It's not enough to have a couple of people say, yeah, that guy's a traitor. You need at least 2 witnesses to the exact same overt act. They both have to see the same thing happen at the same time. It's like needing 2 photos of the exact same moment from 2 different cameras. So here's how it breaks down. Treason has 2 parts: adherence to the enemy, basically your loyalty, and an overt act of helping them. Mateo's job at the public opinion office, that proved his adherence. But only the arrest of Calubran and Chan met that super strict 2-witness requirement for an actual physical overt act. Okay, so the guilty verdict stands. What does that mean for Pastor Tan Mateo? what was the final judgment? He was sentenced to 15 years of what's called reclusion temporale. That's a serious, long-term prison sentence under Philippine law. And it wasn't just the prison time. He was also hit with a pretty hefty fine, 2,000 pesos, which was a lot of money back then, and he had to pay for all the court costs. So, when all was said and done, the Supreme Court's final word was simple: affirmed. They upheld the entire decision of the lower court. Case closed. And that really leaves us with this one big final question. This whole case shows us just how incredibly high the legal bar is for treason. So you have to ask, why? Why make it so hard to prove? Well, the answer is written in the pages of history. The charge of treason has, time and again, been used as a weapon by governments to crush their political enemies. So this rule, this tough two-witness rule, it's not just a technicality, it's a shield, built to protect people from false accusations when tensions are high. It's a way of saying that for the most serious crime you can commit against your country, you need the most rock-solid proof possible.